So you could use the N-word.
No, it's legal too. Yes.
But you can't use. You have to say zir.
Yeah.
You have to say Z. Whew. Wow. This is crazy. This is really crazy. This is a bizarre moment in time where
it is bizarre.
The preposterous nature of it is so undeniable that it's forcing a lot of people. And I applaud you for doing what you're doing and risking your status with the university, risking your support of your peers, and sticking your neck out the way you've been doing with your YouTube videos. Because if you hadn't done that, there's a lot of people who wouldn't be aware of how insidious and what you were describing earlier, the creep, the slow creep towards pushing forward, waiting for you to object, waiting, and then moving forward a little bit more once you relax.
Yeah.
Because that's what this is.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been bizarre, I can tell you that. I mean, my son and I counted the number of press articles that have been devoted to this. These are serious press articles. This doesn't count YouTube or radio or TV or any of those things. And I mean, the YouTube coverage has been, I would say, overwhelming. There's been 170 major press articles written about those videos in the last 2 months.
And what's the general consensus? Are they going?
Well, to begin with, in the first 2 weeks, which was the most stressful part of this for me, I would say the bulk of the press articles ran contrary to my views, and their basic theme was something like, "Why doesn't the mean professor just play nice?" It was something like that. But luckily, fortunately, I seemed to maneuver past that, and then people started to actually read the policies that I was speaking about and started to think about them. And one thing about the press is that they're actually fairly in favor of free expression, given that that's their absolute bread and butter. And so the tenor shifted, and I would say the overwhelming majority of press articles in the last, apart from the first 2 weeks, have been positive.
Well, that's great. What you've done in your YouTube videos, which I think is an amazing forum, particularly for what you're doing, is document and describe in great detail the issues with every single one of these problems with no interruption. And I think that's one of the best things about it. The fact that there's not really a whole lot of forums that will give you the chance to express yourself. I've seen some of your videos have hundreds of thousands of views. Mm-hmm. And there's not a whole lot of forums where you can do that and speak for, I mean, they're all like an hour long, mm-hmm. right?
I know. I
mean, it's amazing.
It is amazing. YouTube is well, I started posting my lectures on YouTube, my classroom lectures in 2013, and in really bare bones form. They're just an iPad recording of me lecturing. I didn't edit in the slides or the images, partly because that's very time consuming. But then I watched it for about 2 years, and by September of this year, it had climbed to about 1 million views. And then I really started thinking about YouTube, because YouTube was cute cat videos, and Justin Bieber songs for a very long period of time. But it's not that anymore. And that's probably been about 2 years or maybe 2.5 years. But then I realized that YouTube is actually a revolution that's as overwhelming as the Gutenberg press revolution. Gutenberg invented the printing press. And because for the first time in human history, a lecture can have the same reach and the same longevity as a book. And it's a lot easier for people to listen. And the time lag to publication is basically zero, right? I mean, because you can do it live, I guess, as we are right now, or you can post it in a day or two after publishing it, and you have access to this insanely large audience. And the other thing that's really interesting about YouTube with regards to especially the more academic videos, is there's only one reason that people are watching them. One, it's not the production quality. The audio's okay, and I'm a good speaker, but it's not the production quality. The reason they're watching them is because they want to know. And that's something that's really cool about YouTube. And YouTube also seems to be quite skeptical about advanced production values. The people who are popular are often people like you, who are basically sitting there talking, and everyone's listening. It's like, oh, well, people are actually talking about something, and this turns out to be interesting. It's like the rebirth of genuine journalism. So, yeah, YouTube's God only knows what YouTube is, but
well, I think
it's
the
a
internet
social
in general,
revolution.
I believe you're right, and I think the internet in general is this really new thing in terms of the ability to express yourself. I mean, it's only existed for 20 plus years, and in terms of human history, that's a blink of an eye. And it's only really been used, as you've described, over the last couple of years in this form. And I think it also is responsible, I think, for a great deal of the rise of the popularity of the social justice movement. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think these echo chambers and these people that do find these patterns of behavior that they subscribe to. And I think that's a part of the problem with ideologies in general, is that instead of thinking for yourself, you subscribe to a predetermined pattern of behavior and you lock in, like, this is what I'm supposed to believe, this is what I'm supposed to enforce, this is what I'm supposed to side with, and you go with that. One of the good things about the internet is that it is potentially possible to see contrary viewpoints and analyze them in the comfort of your own home and being by yourself and looking at maybe one of your videos, and maybe someone would come to your, and I'm sure a lot have come to your videos in anger, mad at you, and then listen to your points of view and listen to how clearly you've established all of these positions and what you actually feel is the problem with these positions in a very calm and very rational and a very well-educated point of view. And I think these people, they have the potential to be at least informed, and because I've
had lots of letters, obviously, maybe, I don't know, 2,500 letters maybe to my email accounts now about this, and a very large number of them, maybe 200 letters, 150 to 200, have been from people on the radical left who've written to me and said that they can no longer speak, because the authoritarian types, the PC authoritarians, have got so controlling that their once fashionable position is now being deemed unacceptable, and they're alienated and excluded. I mean, you see that happening with feminists like Germaine Greer. I mean, Germaine Greer, who's been banned from campuses, she's not very happy with the idea that being a woman is something that's been reduced to a whim, right? Because she thinks that there's more to being a woman than mere subjective choice. Well, that's no longer a tenable viewpoint on the left, and so people who hold that viewpoint, many of them are feminists, are no longer getting along with the, say, radical gender bender activist types who've got center stage at the moment. So
yeah, Christine Summers has the same issue with that. She's a feminist, and she calls herself the factual feminist, and she pushes back against. And what her perspective is instead of embracing these false narratives and running with them as if they're the facts and just using that to reinforce your ideology, she's saying that does feminism a disservice. Let's look at the actual reality of the situation, and let's look at it from a balanced and objective perspective. And she gets so much hate for that.
Yeah.
The idea of being rational and objective.
Well, that's because as far as the postmodern social justice warriors are concerned, those are just code words for oppression. There's no object. You got to remember this with regards to having these sorts of arguments. When you say objective and rational, that's predicated on your implicit belief that there is such a thing as the objective and there is such a thing as rational. And the radical postmodernists, they do not buy that. Not at all. Not at all. As far as they're concerned, that's just another power game on your part. And built into the laws, like Bill C-16 in Canada now, and the same in the laws in New York City that govern the use of these gender pronouns, built into the law is the idea that there's no biological foundation for your identity, and that it's all purely subjective. They built that into the law. No objective reality, no biology. That's going to unfold over the next 20 years.
Or not. I mean, isn't it possible that these kind of discussions and that your videos and that all the people that agree and all the people that are pushing back against this can have some sort of an effect on this movement? Or do you think it's inevitable?
I would say yes. I mean,
are you cynical about the future?
No. I'm not at all cynical about the future. I am cynical about my ability to predict the future. Like when I was younger, much younger, back in the 1980s, I mean, I was very, very concerned about the possibility of nuclear war. But by about,
as we all were.
Yes, as we all were, yes. By about the mid-90s, though, I realized that things were in such a state of chaotic flux that the one thing I could be certain of was that no matter what I was afraid of with regards to the future, that isn't what was going to happen. And so I'm not cynical about the future, but I do believe that we're in an unprecedented state of indeterminacy and flux, and God only knows what could happen. I'm not, having said that, I wouldn't say I'm optimistic about the possibility that the universities will reform themselves, because I think that, well, even with the free speech debate that the University of Toronto hosted, they did 3 politically correct things during the debate, which I thought was really interesting, because if I would have staged the debate and been working on their side, let's say, I would have said, strategically speaking, no politically correct maneuvering during this debate, because all it's going to do is discredit us. But that isn't what happened. The university opened up by noting that the land on which we were having the debate was once what was once property owned by the original Native Americans, which is something I find abhorrent, because on the one hand we took it, and now on the other hand we want to be friends. It's like, I don't think you get to have both sides of that moral play at the same time. But that's okay. That's how the university opened the debate. And then the next thing that happened was that they announced that there would be counselors waiting outside for anybody who was too traumatized by the contents of the discussion. And then they closed by announcing the Trans Day of Remembrance. You know, but the reason I'm pointing this out is because it just shows you the fact that those things happened. They weren't even strategic. That's just how things are at the university. And they didn't even notice that people were going to turn themselves inside out, noticing that, saying, well, God, this is so biased, I can hardly believe it, which is exactly what happened. That's how saturated the universities are with this kind of thinking. And I don't have any idea what can reverse that. Collective decisions on the part of citizens, A, to stop sending their children there, B, to stop donating money and leaving it in wills, and C, to pressure politicians. Like, in my wilder moments, I think, cut the funding to the universities by 25%. And let the faculty have a war about what's important. And maybe what would be left over was what the university should be. But I really think it's, with the exception of the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics ends of things, I think it's come to that.
Don't you think that what you're doing when you're making these videos is, in a sense, branching out away from just a university and teaching online? Because you are.
Well, like I said, I think that you could make a case that that's where the university is, because that's where people are going just to get knowledge. They have no other motivation. And
this is a new thing, obviously. But at one point in time, so was the printing press.
Right.
And this new ability to disseminate information seems to me to be more effective, more accessible, more reasonable.
Yeah.
And it's entirely possible that what we're looking at is the future of education.
Maybe it could be. It could be. I mean, I've been spending a lot of time in the last month or so also concentrating on video editing. And so I spent about 10 hours this week editing about an hour discussion with a Russian Orthodox icon carver, weirdly enough, that I'm going to launch in the next 3 or 4 days. And we discussed things that are very image heavy. And so I've been cutting in a lot of images. And it is a technology that far supersedes what, I mean, I like lecturing, and lectures can be very effective. But basically with YouTube, you can turn your lecture into a documentary. And then instead of teaching 100 people, you can teach 50,000. It's like, that's a lot different. That's a lot different. And it ends up there permanently.
Yes, and that 50,000 can grow and grow and grow. And as it becomes more spread and shared, also the discussions about it become more varied.
Yeah. Well, more than 3 million people have watched some element of this in the last couple of months. And in September, I had about 9,000 subscribers. That took me about 3 years to build. And one of my ambitions, which was kind of a tongue-in-cheek and comical ambition, is I thought, you know, I bet I can get more subscribers in the next 3 years than the U of T has students. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. It's like all of a sudden I could have a body of students, let's say, that's larger than the entire university. It's like, what? Well, just exactly what the hell does that mean? And the answer to that is, I don't know what that means. Who knows what that means? But one of the other perverse things that happened while I was being warned and cautioned by the university was that my subscriber base grew from 9,000 to 65,000. So now I have more YouTube subscribers than the University of Toronto has students. It's like, so then I think, well, hell, you know, I could do a whole series on Solzhenitsyn. I could do a whole series on George Orwell. I could do a whole series on Aldous Huxley. I could do a whole series on archetypal biblical stories. And half of me thinks, well, if 50,000 people are going to watch each of those and I can turn them into documentaries instead of just lectures, maybe that's what I should be doing. Like, I couldn't write a book with that much reach. That's crazy reach.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's revolutionary. I believe that. I believe it's revolutionary.
I believe it is too, and I believe no one saw it coming. And I think it's such a new thing that we're all just sort of starting to get a handle on how to use it and what it's capable of.
Yes, well, it was like the internet was for pornography. Well, that changed quick. And YouTube was for cute cat videos. And that changed quick too. You don't know what the technology is going to do.